Hello, story lovers. Tonight, we're diving into a tale of passion, secrets, and choices that could change everything. Hearts will be broken, love will be tested, and every twist will leave you on the edge of your seat. Comment below where you're watching from. And if this story moves you, hit like, subscribe. Share it with someone who loves a powerful love story. And tap the bell so you never miss the next thrilling chapter. Ready? Let's begin. The fluorescent lights of Crosstech Industries hummed against the silence of midnight, casting harsh shadows across polished marble that reflected Diana Torres like a ghost. She pushed her cleaning cart down the 42nd floor corridor, rubber-soled shoes whispering secrets to the empty hallway. At 28, invisibility had become her armor. Her dark hair pulled tight against her skull as if she could make herself smaller, less threatening to the world that had already decided what she was worth. The corner office loomed ahead, its glass walls revealing Seattle's skyline like a postcard from someone else's life. Nathan Cross, CEO, the nameplate announced in letters that probably cost more than her monthly rent. 8 months she had cleaned this space, dusting trophies and organizing papers worth millions. While listening to French business podcasts through cheap earbuds, keeping her mind sharp even as her body scrubbed floors, she knocked, a formality for an empty room, and slid her keycard through the reader. The lock clicked open with a sound like a small surrender. The city stretched before her, lights twinkling across Puget Sound. And for a moment, Diana let herself remember what it felt like to look at a view like this from the other side of the glass. When her name had meant something, when her PhD had opened doors instead of closing them, when her mother's illness hadn't yet consumed every dream she'd ever dared to have. Footsteps shattered her reverie. Diana turned to see a man striding toward the office with the confident fury of someone who had never been told no. Tall, expensive navy suit rumpled from stress. Dark hair disheveled in a way that somehow made him look more powerful rather than less. Nathan, Cross in the flesh, and from the tension in his jaw, he was hunting something. "Excuse me," he said, barely glancing at her as he swept past. His voice carried the casual authority of inherited wealth and Ivy League degrees. "I need to work in here." Diana straightened, gathering her supplies with practiced efficiency. "Of course, Mr. Cross. I can finish tomorrow night." But he was already at his desk, ripping through drawers with increasing desperation. Papers scattered across mahogany like wounded birds. His movements grew more frantic, each failed search tightening the coil of panic in his shoulders. "Where is it?" he muttered, loud enough for her to hear. "The board meeting is in 6 hours and I can't find the translation." Diana continued working quietly in the outer office, but through the glass walls, she watched him unravel. She had seen him before, through security camera footage playing on the breakroom TV, conducting meetings with surgical precision, his green eyes cold and calculating. This version of Nathan Cross looked like a man drowning in his own ambitions. "This is impossible," he said, holding up a document thick with text and official seals. His voice cracked with frustration. "How am I supposed to present this when I can't read a single word?" "German." Diana recognized it from 20 feet away, the Gothic font unmistakable. Her pulse quickened despite herself. She had spent 3 years specializing in German business law, back when her credentials had mattered. Back when she had been someone. Nathan emerged from behind his desk, running his hands through his hair until it stood at wild angles. For the first time, he actually looked at her instead of through her. His green eyes locked onto hers with sharp intelligence and something darker underneath, something desperate that made her stomach tighten. "You were listening to something foreign earlier, weren't you?" His tone carried contempt wrapped in honey. "When I came in, you were wearing headphones." "Yes, sir." Diana kept her voice carefully neutral. "French business podcasts." Nathan laughed, short and humorless. "French, of course." He waved the German document at her like a weapon. "I don't suppose you know anything about complex legal documents?" "German ones, specifically." The question hung between them, loaded with every assumption he'd ever made about people who cleaned floors for minimum wage. Diana saw it in his expression, that particular brand of privileged blindness that mistook circumstance for capacity. To Nathan Cross, she was nothing more than background noise in his important life. Maybe someone who'd picked up foreign words from television. Certainly not someone who could help him. Something hot and familiar kindled in Diana's chest. Anger, yes, but also something harder, colder. The same feeling she'd had when embassy officials questioned her motives. When employers dismissed her PhD as worthless paper from a worthless country. When life stripped away everything but survival. "I might," she said quietly. Nathan's eyebrows rose. His smile turned patronizing, cruel in its casual confidence. "Might." He held up the document with theatrical flourish. "This is a critical merger agreement for a $100 million acquisition in Berlin. My German translator won't be available until next week, but the board meets tomorrow morning to approve the deal." His gaze traveled down her body, taking in the Sterling Cleaning Services uniform, the cart filled with spray bottles and rags, the evidence of her reduced circumstances. His expression shifted to something between amusement and contempt, the look of someone about to enjoy himself at another person's expense. "I'll tell you what," Nathan said, his voice dripping with false generosity. "I'll pay you $1,000 if you can actually translate even the first paragraph of this document. Consider it my contribution to your education fund." The words landed like blows. Not just the insult, but the casual cruelty behind it. The assumption that humiliating her might brighten his stressful evening. Diana had been mocked before, dismissed before, underestimated so many times she'd lost count. But something about this moment, this man crystallized every injustice she'd swallowed into. Something sharp and bright. She set down her cleaning supplies with deliberate care and looked directly into Nathan. Cross's privileged green eyes. "Show me the document," Nathan blinked, clearly not expecting her calm response. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. Then he handed over the papers with the air of someone indulging a child's fantasy. Already anticipating the entertainment value of her failure, Diana accepted the document and let her eyes move across the dense German text. Recognition sparked through her nervous system like electricity. Merger agreement. Acquisition terms. Due diligence requirements. Regulatory compliance. All of it familiar territory. The language of her previous life flowing back through her mind as if she'd never stopped speaking it. The irony burned. 8 months she'd cleaned Nathan Cross's office, and now she held in her hands exactly the kind of document she'd once been paid 6 figures to analyze. "This is a merger agreement between Crosstech Industries and Brenner Solutions," Diana began, her voice steady and professional. "The first paragraph establishes the basic terms of the acquisition, including a purchase price of €97 million, subject to due diligence completion within 60 days. Nathan's patronizing smile faltered. "What kind of due diligence?" "Technical audit of Brenner's manufacturing facilities, review of their intellectual property portfolio, and verification of their regulatory compliance status with the European Union." Diana continued reading, her frown deepening as she processed what she was seeing. "But there's a problem with Section 3. "What kind of problem?" Nathan stepped closer, his casual arrogance replaced by sharp attention. Diana looked up from the document, meeting his eyes with something that felt dangerously close to satisfaction. "The regulatory compliance requirements include environmental certifications that typically take 4 to 6 months to obtain. According to this timeline, you have 45 days to complete the entire acquisition, including certifications that your own legal team should have flagged as impossible to obtain within that time frame." The color drained from Nathan's face. "That can't be right." "My legal team reviewed this agreement thoroughly. Your legal team missed the implications because they're buried in subsection language," Diana replied, handing the document back to him. "It's a common negotiation tactic in German business law. The seller appears to be offering reasonable terms while actually creating an impossible timeline that will allow them to retain your deposit when the deal inevitably fails." Stared at the papers in his hands as if they'd transformed into something poisonous. The confident CEO who had mocked her minutes earlier now looked like a man watching his empire crumble in real time. "You actually understood all of that," he whispered. "I hold a PhD in international business law from Universidad del Rosario in Colombia," Diana said quietly. Before I came to Seattle, I worked as a senior legal consultant for multinational corporations throughout South America. I specialized in cross-border mergers and acquisitions, particularly involving German and American companies. The silence stretched between them, thick with the weight of his assumptions and her reality. Nathan opened his mouth, closed it, struggled visibly with how to respond to having his worldview shattered in less than 5 minutes. Then why are you working as a cleaner? His voice was softer now, but still edged with disbelief. Because my mother needs dialysis 3 times a week at $400 per session. Diana replied, steel underneath the steadiness. Because international credentials take years and thousands of dollars to transfer in the United States. Because cleaning companies hire people with uncertain immigration status. And law firms don't. Because sometimes life forces you to choose between your pride and your family's survival. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely shaken. I had no idea. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to assume. You didn't just assume, Mr. Cross. Diana began gathering her cleaning supplies, her movements deliberate. You offered me money as a joke because you thought I was too stupid to read. You treated me like entertainment because you've never had to question whether you deserved the opportunities you were given. Wait, Nathan's voice stopped her at the door. The merger agreement. If what you're saying is true, we're about to walk into a disaster tomorrow morning. The board is voting on final approval. Diana paused, her hand on the cart handle. She could walk away now, let Nathan Cross and his company burn in the fire of their own arrogance. It would be justice, in a way. Poetic even. But she thought of her mother in the dialysis chair, of the bills stacking up. Of the opportunities she'd been denied, not because she lacked ability, but because she lacked the right kind of papers. She turned back to face him. What exactly are you asking me, Mr. Cross? Nathan looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. Calculation mixed with desperation, mixed with something that might have been respect. Help me fix this, he said. Please, I'll pay you whatever you want. I'll help with your mother's medical bills, your credential transfers, whatever you need. Just don't let me walk into that boardroom blind. Diana felt something dangerous unfold in her chest. Not just opportunity, but power. The same kind of power Nathan Cross wielded every day without thinking. Now offered to her like a lifeline she wasn't sure she should. I need to think about it, she said. Meeting is in 6 hours, and I suggest you start thinking very carefully about what you're willing to offer me, Mr. Cross, because if I'm going to save your company, it's going to cost you more than $1,000 and an apology. She walked out of his office, leaving Nathan Cross standing alone in the wreckage of his assumptions, and for the first time in 8 months, Diana Torres felt like more than a ghost in someone else's life. Her phone buzzed in her pocket as she reached the elevator. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her thumb hover over the accept button. Diana Torres? A woman's voice, professional but urgent. This is Seattle Memorial Hospital. Your mother was brought in 30 minutes ago. There's been a complication with her dialysis. You need to come immediately. The phone slipped from Diana's hand, clattering against the marble floor. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and dying flowers. Diana sat in a plastic chair outside the ICU, her cleaning uniform still reeking of ammonia and floor polish. While doctors spoke in careful voices about kidney failure and emergency procedures and costs that made her vision blur at the edges. We can stabilize her tonight, Dr. Patel said, his kind eyes unable to hide the truth behind his words. But she needs a transplant within the next 3 months, or we're looking at permanent organ failure. The waiting list is 2 years minimum. Private facilities can move faster, but you're looking at upwards of $300,000. $300,000. The number hung in the sterile air like a death sentence. Diana nodded mechanically. Signed papers she couldn't read through the tears she refused to shed, and watched through glass walls as her mother lay unconscious, machines breathing for her, keeping her tethered to a life that was slipping away with every labored heartbeat. Her phone buzzed. Nathan Cross. She'd forgotten about him entirely, forgotten his merger and his desperation and his cruel green eyes. The text was simple. I'm sorry about your mother. Come to my office at 6 a.m. We need to talk. Diana stared at the words until they stopped making sense. Then she stood, kissed her mother's forehead through the glass, and walked out into the pre-dawn darkness with the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her shoulders. The cross-deck building at 6 in the morning felt different, empty but alive, humming with potential energy, like a stage before the curtain rises. Diana rode the elevator to the 42nd floor, still wearing her uniform. Too exhausted to care about appearances, too desperate to waste time on pride, Nathan was waiting in his office. He'd changed into a fresh suit, charcoal gray with a crimson tie. But his eyes carried the same haunted exhaustion Diana felt in her bones. 2 cups of coffee sat on his desk, steam rising in twin spirals. "How is she?" he asked without preamble. "Dying," Diana said flatly. "Unless I can find $300,000 in a kidney in the next 3 months. Nathan's jaw tightened. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Sit, please." Diana sat, accepted the coffee he offered, and waited. She'd learned patience in the long nights of her mother's illness, learned to hold herself still while the world collapsed around her. "I spent the night reading your work," Nathan said, turning his laptop screen toward her. Diana's breath caught. Her dissertation, published papers, case studies she'd written years ago when her name had still meant something. "You weren't just good at what you did. You were brilliant. 3 successful acquisitions totaling over $500 million before you were 26. That was another life. It doesn't have to be." Nathan leaned forward, his green eyes intense. "I made a mistake last night. A cruel, ignorant mistake. But I'm also a businessman, and I see an opportunity here. For both of us?" Diana's fingers tightened around the coffee cup. "What kind of opportunity?" "The board meeting is in 3 hours. If I walk in there with a flawed merger agreement, they'll vote no confidence, and I'll lose my position as CEO. My father built this company from nothing, and I'll have destroyed it through arrogance and carelessness. But if I walk in there with a solution, with someone who can save the deal, I keep my company. And you get what you need. My mother's transplant. $300,000. Immediate access to the best private facility in Seattle. And a full-time position as my senior legal consultant at twice what you were making in Colombia." Nathan pulled out a contract, already prepared, every term spelled out in precise legal language, plus expedited processing for your credential transfers. "I have connections in the State Department." Diana took the contract with trembling hands. It was real, comprehensive. Exactly what she needed, tied up in a neat bow by a man who 12 hours ago had mocked her for entertainment. "Why?" she asked. "You could find another consultant, another way out of this. Why offer me this?" Nathan was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he spoke, his voice carried something Diana recognized because she'd heard it in her own voice too many times to count. "Shame, because I've spent my entire life being Nathan Cross, son of James Cross, inheritor of everything I never had to earn. And last night, you held my company's future in your hands and could have watched it burn. You had every right to, but you didn't." He met her eyes. "I want to know what it feels like to deserve the things I have, and I think you can teach me that." Diana studied the contract, looking for the trap she knew had to be there. Men like Nathan Cross didn't give without taking. But the terms were clean, straightforward, almost too generous. "There's a catch," she said. "There's always a catch. The catch is that you have to work directly with me, every day. I need someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm wrong, who sees through the bullshit corporate politics. Someone who's had to fight for everything and knows what real stakes look like." Nathan's smile was bitter. "Turns out being surrounded by yes-men nearly destroyed everything my father built. I need the opposite of that." Diana thought of her mother in the ICU, of the machines keeping her alive, of the ticking clock counting down to permanent organ failure. She thought of her PhD collecting dust in a drawer, of 8 months scrubbing floors, while her mind screamed for something more. She thought of Nathan's cruel smile last night and his desperate eyes this morning. "If I do this," she said slowly, "I'm not your employee. I'm your partner. equal say in every decision related to international acquisitions. My name on the paperwork. Full access to everything. I did not. Done. And you're going to stand in front of that board in 2 hours and tell them exactly what happened? That you were ready to sign a disastrous deal, and that I, your cleaning lady, saved your company. No sugarcoating. No protecting your ego. Something flickered in Nathan's expression. Pride warring with desperation. Warring with something that might have been respect. That will make me look incompetent. You were incompetent. Own it. Diana set down the coffee cup. Those are my terms. Take them, or let your company burn. Nathan held her gaze for 10 seconds that felt like hours. Then he laughed, genuine this time, a sound of surprise and something darker underneath. My father used to say that the people who challenge you are the ones worth keeping close. I never understood what he meant until now. He stood, offered his hand across the desk. Partners. Diana took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and carried an electric charge that made her pulse quicken in ways that had nothing to do with business deals and everything to do with the dangerous territory they were entering. Partners, she agreed. Next to ours passed in a blur of frantic analysis. Diana dissected the merger agreement with surgical precision while Nathan made calls, canceled meetings, assembled documents. They worked in synchronized chaos, her legal expertise complementing his business instincts, until the flawed deal transformed into something salvageable. At 8:55, they stood outside the boardroom doors. Diana had changed into a spare suit from Nathan's office wardrobe, charcoal gray that matched his, tailored for someone taller but serviceable. Her hair was still pulled back in that severe ponytail, but now it looked intentional, professional, like armor. Ready? Nathan asked. Diana thought of her mother dying 3 miles away, of the contract in her bag that could save everything, of the chasm she was about to leap across with no certainty of landing safely on the other side. Oh, she said honestly, but let's do it anyway. Nathan smiled, and for the first time Diana saw something in his expression that wasn't arrogance or desperation, something that looked almost like admiration. They walked into the boardroom together. 12 faces turned toward them, expressions ranging from confusion to irritation. Diana recognized most of them from business magazines and financial news. Old money, new money, the kind of power that shaped markets and destroyed lives without thinking twice. Nathan, a silver-haired man, said from the head of the table, "You're late. And who is this?" "This is Diana Torres," Nathan said, his voice carrying the same authority Diana remembered from security footage. "She's going to explain why we're not voting on the Brenner acquisition today." A woman in a severe black suit leaned forward. "Excuse me? We've spent 6 months on this deal." "What are you talking about?" Nathan looked at Diana. His expression said everything. This was her moment. Sink or swim. Prove she deserved the chance he was offering, or watch it disappear. Diana stepped forward, set her analysis on the conference table, and began to speak. She talked for 20 minutes, breaking down every flaw in the merger agreement, every hidden trap in the subsection language, every way Brenner Solutions had engineered the deal to fail while keeping Crosstech's $50 million deposit. She spoke in clear, precise terms that left no room for misunderstanding, answering questions with the kind of expertise that couldn't be faked or borrowed. The boardroom grew quieter as she spoke. Hostile expressions shifted to concentration, shifted to something that looked like grudging respect. When she finished, the silver-haired man leaned back in his chair. "And you discovered all of this when exactly?" "Last night," Diana said. "At approximately 12:15 a.m. Last night." The woman in black narrowed her eyes. "How exactly were you reviewing our confidential merger agreements last night?" Diana felt Nathan tense beside her. This was the moment of truth. The moment where he would either own his mistakes or throw her under the bus to save his reputation. Nathan stepped forward. "Because Diana is our new senior legal consultant for international acquisitions. I hired her after she identified these flaws while cleaning my office. She was working the night shift for Sterling Cleaning Services. I mocked her, insulted her intelligence, and nearly threw away her expertise because I assumed someone pushing a cleaning cart couldn't possibly have a PhD in international business law from one of South America's top universities. Silence in the boardroom was absolute. I was ready to sign. A deal that would have cost this company $50 million, Nathan continued, his voice steady, despite the color rising in his cheeks. Diana saved us from that disaster. She's the reason we're not voting today. And she's the reason we're going to renegotiate from a position of strength instead of desperation. My arrogance nearly destroyed what my father built. Her brilliance saved it. The silver-haired man studied Diana with new intensity. Torres, I know that name. You worked on the Mendoza-Usmid acquisition in 2021. That was masterful negotiation work. Thank you, Diana said quietly. Why the hell were you cleaning offices? The question hung in the air, weighted with implications Diana wasn't sure she wanted to unpack. But Nathan spoke before she could answer. Because our immigration and credential recognition systems are designed to waste talent, he said. Because we'd rather let brilliant people scrub floors than admit our system is broken. Because I spent my entire life benefiting from privilege I never questioned until someone forced me to see past my own assumptions. The woman in black smiled, sharp and knowing. Well, this is certainly the most interesting board meeting I've attended in 20 years. She looked at Diana. What can you fix the Brenner deal? Yes, Diana said without hesitation. But it's going to require completely restructuring the timeline and bringing in third-party compliance verification. I'll need 3 weeks and full authorization to negotiate directly with Brenner's legal team. What? You have it, the silver-haired man said. And Diana? Welcome to Crosstech. We're lucky Nathan found you, even if he had to be hit over the head with his own stupidity to see what was right in front of him. Laughter rippled through the boardroom, tension breaking like a wave. Nathan's hand found Diana's elbow. A brief touch of gratitude or relief or something more complicated, they left the boardroom together. And Diana's phone buzzed immediately. Seattle Memorial Hospital? Her hands shook as she answered. Yes, Ms. Torres, your mother is stable. And I have good news. We may have found a donor match. A private benefactor has agreed to expedite the testing process. If the match is confirmed, we could have her in surgery within the week. On his knees went weak. Nathan caught her elbow again, this time keeping her upright as the world tilted sideways. What private benefactor? She whispered. The donation was made anonymously, but it came through Crosstech Industries Medical Fund. Diana looked at Nathan. He was already walking toward the elevator, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice too low to hear. But she saw his expression and profile, saw the tension in his shoulders, and understood. He'd made the call before the board meeting. Before he knew if she could actually save his company. Before he knew if his gamble would pay off. The elevator doors closed behind him, before she could speak. Diana stood alone in the corridor. The contract in her bag feeling heavier than it had an hour ago, as if she'd just signed something far more binding than a business agreement. Her phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Your mother's transplant is scheduled for Monday. The donor is a match. But there's something you need to know about how I got it. Something that's going to change everything. Meet me on the roof at midnight. Come alone, Anne. The Crosstech building rooftop at midnight felt like standing at the edge of the world. Wind whipped across the concrete expanse, carrying the salt smell of Puget Sound and the distant wail of sirens from streets 42 floors below. Diana pulled her coat tighter and watched the city lights blur through threatening rain clouds. Nathan stood near the rooftop edge, his suit jacket discarded somewhere, shirt sleeves rolled up despite the cold. He didn't turn when she approached, just kept staring out at the skyline like he was memorizing it or saying goodbye to it. You came, he said. Your text suggested I didn't have a choice. Nathan finally turned to face her. In the harsh security lighting, his face looked older, carved from shadows and regret. You always have a choice, Diana. That's the point. Then tell me what you meant about the donor. How did you get a kidney match so fast? The waiting list is years long. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of confession. My younger brother died 3 years ago. Car accident. He was an organ donor. His kidney went to a recipient through Seattle Memorial Hospital's program. He paused, his jaw working. I made a call to the coordinator, asked if that recipient would consider donating to your mother. Diana's stomach dropped. You what? The recipient is healthy now. She doesn't need both kidneys. I offered her $5 million to undergo the surgery and donate to your mother. She agreed. You bought a kidney. Diana's voice came out strangled. You paid someone $5 million to cut out their organ and give it to my mother. I gave someone $5 million to save your mother's life, Nathan corrected. And yes, before you ask, it's completely illegal. Organ selling violates federal law. If anyone finds out, I'll go to prison and your mother won't get the transplant. The rooftop seemed to tilt beneath Diana's feet. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what you're agreeing to. Nathan stepped closer, his green eyes boring into hers. If you accept this kidney, you're complicit. If the truth comes out, your mother's transplant gets canceled, and you could face criminal charges for conspiracy. Your PhD, your career, everything you're working to rebuild would be destroyed. Diana's hands clenched into fists. You had no right to put me in this position. I know. You're leveraging my mother's life to what? Tie me to you. Make sure I can't walk away without destroying everything? No. Nathan's voice turned sharp. I'm trying to be honest about the consequences of saving her life. I could have lied to you. Let you think it was a miraculous coincidence. Let you accept the transplant with a clear conscience while I carried the guilt alone. But I won't do that to you. How noble, Diana said bitterly. The rich man gives me a choice between my mother's death and my own damnation. It's not nobility. It's respect. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. You told me this morning that you've spent years being underestimated. Having people make decisions for you because they assumed you couldn't handle the truth. I won't do that. This is the reality. Your mother lives, but the price is higher than money. The price is complicity in something that could destroy you. Rain began to fall, cold drops that hit the rooftop like accusations. Diana stood frozen, her mind racing through implications and consequences and the impossible mathematics of moral choices. The donor, she said slowly. Does she know she's breaking the law? Yes, she's terminal. Stage 4 cancer. The $5 million goes to her children after she dies. She told me she'd rather spend her last months knowing her kids would be taken care of and that her kidney would save a life. Even if it meant risking prison time, she won't live to see. Something cracked in Diana's chest. You're telling me a dying woman is sacrificing her freedom for my mother? I'm telling you that sometimes the world is more complicated than legal and illegal, right and wrong. Nathan's voice softened. I'm telling you that the system that made you clean floors while your mother died is the same system that says desperate people can't help each other without government permission. And I'm asking if you can live with breaking that rule. Diana thought of her mother's face, slack with unconsciousness, machines breathing for her. She thought of $300,000 she'd never see in a lifetime of scrubbing floors. She thought of her PhD gathering dust and her expertise wasted and the years she'd spent swallowing pride to survive. This isn't a choice, she whispered. This is a hostage situation. It's the only choice I could give you, Nathan said. I know what that makes me. I know I'm manipulating you with your mother's life. I know this is wrong in every way that matters. But I also know that in 72 hours she could be alive and healthy. And you could build the life you were meant to have. So I'm asking you to forgive me for giving you an impossible choice and make it anyway. The rain fell harder, soaking through Diana's coat, plastering her hair to her skull. She felt stripped bare, every defense mechanism she'd built dissolving in the cold downpour. Why? She demanded. Why go this far for someone you met 12 hours ago? Nathan stepped closer, close enough that she could see the rain on his eyelashes, the pulse beating in his throat. Because I've spent my entire life doing the safe thing, the legal thing, the thing that protected my company and my reputation and my father's legacy. And it made me into the kind of man who mocks cleaning ladies for entertainment. You walked into my office and reminded me that there are things worth risking everything for, that sometimes being a good person means breaking bad rules. You're not a good person, Diana said, but her voice lacked conviction. Good people don't put others in impossible situations. No, they don't. Nathan's hand reached up, hesitated, then gently touched her cheek. His palm was warm despite the cold rain. But maybe we can be better people together than we are separately. Maybe that's enough. Diana closed her eyes against the touch, against the temptation, against the terrible understanding that she was going to say yes. That she'd been going to say yes from the moment he told her about the donor. That her mother's life was worth more than her principles, and she would carry the weight of that truth for the rest of her days. If I do this, she said, opening her eyes to meet his gaze. If I accept what you've done and become part of this crime, you don't get to be my savior. You don't get to feel noble. We're both guilty. We're both damned. And you're going to live with that just like I will, I know. You're going to help me build something that matters. Not just save my mother, but change the system that forced this choice. The immigration system, the healthcare system, all of it. You're going to use your privilege for something more than protecting your company. Nathan's eyes searched hers, something like hope flickering in their depths. Yes. And if you ever look at someone the way you looked at me last night, if you ever make someone feel small for surviving the only way they could, I will destroy you. I will take everything you've given me and use it to burn your world down. Do you understand? Yes. Diana reached up and wrapped her hand around his wrist, holding his palm against her cheek. The touch felt like sealing a bargain with something darker than business contracts and more binding than law. Then my mother gets the transplant, and we live with what that makes us. Nathan exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. I'm sorry I put you in this position. No, you're not. You'd do it again. Diana stepped back, breaking the contact between them. But so would I. That's what makes us perfect for each other. We're both willing to compromise everything when it matters. She turned to walk away, back toward the rooftop door. Back toward the life she'd just agreed to build on foundations of illegality and moral compromise. But Nathan's voice stopped her. Diana, there's one more thing you need to know. She turned back, dread settling in her stomach like stones. Nathan's expression had shifted to something harder, more guarded. The kidney donor? The woman who agreed to surgery? She's not doing it just for the money. What do you mean? She's my father's widow. My stepmother. Rebecca Cross. The world tilted sideways. Diana grabbed the rooftop railing to steady herself. Your stepmother is dying, and you're paying her to give up her kidney? My stepmother hates me, Nathan said flatly. After my father died, I contested his will. He left her controlling interest in Crosstech. I spent 2 years in court fighting her for the company, dragging our family's dirty secrets through legal proceedings, destroying any relationship we might have had. I won. She lost everything except a settlement that she's already spent on medical bills. And now you're offering her $5 million? I'm offering her revenge. And Nathan's smile was bitter. She knows that if this comes out, I go to prison. The company I stole from her gets destroyed. Her children get financial security, and she gets to watch me lose everything, just like she lost everything. She agreed immediately. With enthusiasm, Diana felt sick. You're trusting a woman who hates you with a secret that could destroy your life? I'm trusting that her love for her children outweighs her hatred for me. And that even if she does decide to expose everything after the surgery, your mother will already have the kidney. The transplant can't be reversed. Nathan met her eyes. I'm gambling my freedom that your mother survives, no matter what happens to me. That's insane. That's what desperation looks like when you're trying to atone for being a terrible person. Nathan stepped closer again, rain streaming down his face. Rebecca might betray me the moment the surgery is over. She might call the FBI, the medical board, every news outlet in Seattle, but your mother will live, and you'll have the job, the money, the chance to build your life back. That's worth the risk. Diana stared at him. At this man who 12 hours ago had mocked her and now was risking everything on the word of someone who wanted him destroyed? The complexity of it made her head spin. The moral calculus was impossible. The variables too tangled to separate. When is the surgery? she asked. Monday morning. 7 a.m. And when does Rebecca get the $5 million? The moment she wakes up from anesthesia. Wire transfer to her children's trust fund. Irrevocable. And if she exposes you, then I hope you're as good at visiting ours as you are at German contract law. Nathan's attempt at humor fell flat. Diana, you can still walk away. I won't blame you. This is too much risk, too much moral weight. You didn't ask for any of this. Diana thought of her mother's smile, the one she hadn't seen in 6 months of illness. She thought of her PhD that could finally mean something again. She thought of the cleaning cart she'd pushed for 8 months while her mind screamed for more. She thought of Nathan's cruel offer last night and his impossible offer tonight. She thought of becoming someone who broke laws to save the people she loved. Someone who compromised principles for survival. Someone who walked into darkness willingly because the alternative was worse. I'm not walking away, she said. But Nathan, if Rebecca destroys you after this, I'm not going down with you. I'll testify against you if I have to. I'll protect myself and my mother. Something flickered in Nathan's eyes. Pain, maybe? Or understanding? I wouldn't expect anything less. Good, then we understand each other. Diana walked to the rooftop door, pulled it open, then paused and looked back at Nathan standing alone in the rain. His white shirt plastered to his body, looking like a man drowning on dry land. Nathan? Yes, thank you. For my mother. For taking the risk. For being honest about how dirty this is. She swallowed hard. And I'm sorry that doing the right thing for once might destroy you. Maybe that's what I deserve, maybe, but you're still doing it. She left him on the rooftop and didn't look back. 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Diana worked 18-hour days restructuring the Brenner deal, proving her worth to the board, building credibility she'd need when everything inevitably fell apart. She visited her mother every evening, holding her hand and lying about where the kidney was coming from, adding deception to the growing list of sins she was accumulating. Nathan worked alongside her, their relationship shifting into something neither of them could name. Professional, but charged with the electricity of shared secrets. Respectful, but weighted with the knowledge that they were bound together by crimes they'd never be able to undo. He never touched her again after that night on the rooftop. But Diana felt his presence like a physical thing, aware of him in ways that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with the dangerous territory they were navigating. Sunday night. She stood at her apartment window watching the rain and thinking about Rebecca Cross going under anesthesia in 8 hours, about the knife that would cut into her body, about the kidney that would save one life while potentially destroying another. Her phone rang at 2 a.m. Nathan. Can't sleep, he said without preamble. I keep thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. So do I. Are you scared? Diana considered lying, then decided they were past that, terrified. Me too. Nathan's voice was soft, intimate in the darkness. Diana, if this goes bad, if Rebecca exposes everything after the surgery, I need you to promise me something. What? Don't blame yourself. Don't carry guilt that belongs to me. I made these choices. I broke these laws. You were just trying to save your mother. We both know that's not how the law works. No. But it's how the truth works. Nathan paused. And Diana? If I do go to prison, will you still visit me? Or am I only worth knowing when I can be useful? The question hung in the silence, vulnerable in a way that made Diana's chest tighten. She thought about the man who'd mocked her a week ago, and the man who was risking everything now. About how quickly people could change when forced to see themselves clearly. I'll visit, she said softly. Because you're right. We're better together than separately. Even if together means talking through prison glass. Nathan's exhale carried relief and something deeper. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still have to survive tomorrow, right? Tomorrow? Another pause. Diana, yes. I'm glad I met you. Even if it destroys me. Diana closed her eyes against the tears that threatened. I'm glad I met you too, even though it probably will. They stayed on the phone until dawn, not talking much. Just breathing together in the darkness before the storm. At 6:55 a.m., Diana stood outside the surgical suite at Seattle Memorial Hospital. Her mother was already under anesthesia. Rebecca Cross was being prepped in the adjacent room. Nathan stood beside Diana, his hand hovering near hers, but not quite touching. Both of them waiting for salvation or disaster. The surgical doors opened. A nurse appeared, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Torres, there's been a complication. You need to come with me now." The nurse led Diana and Nathan down a corridor that smelled of antiseptic and fear. Every step felt like walking toward an execution. Diana's heart hammered against her ribs, her mind spiraling through worst-case scenarios. Her mother dead on the table. Rebecca backing out. The FBI waiting in the surgical suite with handcuffs. They stopped outside a private room. Through the window, Diana could see Rebecca Cross sitting upright in a hospital bed. It's very much not in surgery. Looking remarkably healthy for a woman supposedly dying of cancer. "What's going on?" Nathan demanded, his voice sharp with panic. The nurse gestured them inside without answering. Diana pushed through the door, Nathan close behind her, and found herself face to face with a woman who radiated cold fury beneath a practiced smile. Rebecca Cross was in her early 50s. Elegant even in a hospital gown, with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes that could cut glass. She watched Nathan enter, with an expression that made Diana's blood run cold. "Hello, Nathan," Rebecca said. Her voice carried the warm tone of poison honey. "Thank you for coming. We have so much to discuss. Where's the surgical team?" Nathan's face had gone white. "The transplant is supposed to be happening right now." "Oh, the transplant is happening. Your lawyers didn't read the fine print carefully enough." Rebecca's smile widened. "I'm not the donor, Nathan. I never was." The floor dropped out from under Diana's world. "What?" Rebecca turned her attention to Diana, and something like pity flickered in her cold eyes. "I'm sorry you got caught in this, dear. But you need to understand what kind of man you've tied yourself to." "Rebecca, what did you do?" Nathan's voice came out, strangled. "What you forced me to do. Survive." Rebecca pressed a button on her bed remote. The television mounted on the wall flickered to life, showing security camera footage. Diana recognized Nathan's office the night they met, watched herself reading the German document, watched Nathan's mocking smile, watched their entire conversation play out in grainy black and white. "I've had cameras in Nathan's office for 2 years," Rebecca said conversationally. "Insurance policy from when he was trying to steal the company. I've watched you, Diana. Watched you clean his office for 8 months. Watched you maintain your dignity while he walked past you like you were furniture. And I watched him humiliate you that night before you proved him wrong." Diana couldn't breathe. Couldn't think past the implications spiraling outward like cracks in ice. "I made Nathan an offer," Rebecca continued. $5 million for a kidney. He was so desperate to save you, Diana, so eager to atone for his cruelty, that he didn't question why a dying woman would risk surgery. "Because I'm not dying. I never had cancer." That was a lie to make him trust me. Nathan made a sound like he'd been gut-punched. "Then who's donating the kidney?" "I am," said a voice from the doorway. Diana turned to see a young man in his late 20s. Tall and lean with Nathan's same green eyes and dark hair. The family resemblance was unmistakable. "This is Marcus," Rebecca said, her voice softening with genuine affection. "Nathan's half-brother. James's son from his first marriage. The one Nathan had written out of the company's succession because he was in prison for drug possession when their father died." Marcus stepped into the room, his expression a mixture of anger and something that might have been regret. "I got out 6 months ago. Clean, sober, trying to rebuild my life. Rebecca found me, told me what Nathan had done to her, to the company, to our father's legacy. She offered me a chance to make things right by donating a kidney to a stranger." Diana's voice came out harsh. "What kind of revenge is that?" "It's not revenge," Marcus said quietly. "It's leverage. See, I'm donating my kidney to your mother. Legally, voluntarily, through the proper channels. But the surgery comes with conditions." Rebecca picked up a folder from her bedside table and handed it to Nathan. "You're going to sign over 30% of Crosstech Industries to Marcus. You're going to restore him to the board of directors. You're going to publicly acknowledge what you did to destroy me and apologize. And you're going to pay me the $5 million you promised? Not for a kidney, but as restitution for the company assets you stole. Nathan's hand shook as he opened the folder. Diana watched his face drain of color as he read. And if I refuse? He asked, his voice barely audible.
Ow!
Then Marcus doesn't donate the kidney, and Diana's mother dies. Along with your reputation, Rebecca's smile turned savage. I have footage of you offering to buy a black market organ. I have recordings of every illegal thing you've said and done in the past 3 days. One phone call to the FBI, and you go to prison while Diana's mother dies waiting for a donor that will never come. Your choice, Nathan. Your freedom and your company, or your conscience. The room spun around Diana. She grabbed the edge of the bed to steady herself, bile rising in her throat. This was worse than prison. Worse than exposure? This was manipulation on a level that made Nathan's original offer look like child's play. You're holding a dying woman hostage, Diana said, her voice shaking with rage. You're weaponizing my mother to punish Nathan. I'm using the only leverage that matters to him, Rebecca corrected. Nathan doesn't care about laws or morality. He proved that when he destroyed my life. But he cares about you, Diana. He's cared about you from the moment you proved you were more than he assumed. So I'm making him choose. Does he sacrifice his company to save your mother? Or does he let her die to protect his empire? Diana looked at Nathan. His face had gone blank, that same expression she'd seen through glass walls the night they met, when he'd been searching for the German document. But underneath the blankness, she saw something breaking, something human and raw that made her chest ache. Don't sign it, Diana said. Nathan, don't give her what she wants. Nathan looked up at her, his green eyes full of anguish. Your mother will die. Then she dies. But not because you let someone blackmail you. Not because I'm worth destroying everything your father built. Diana stepped closer to him, her voice low and intense. You taught me that sometimes being a good person means breaking bad rules. This is the opposite. This is being a bad person by following them. Don't do this. Diana, I can't let your mother die because of my mistakes. It's not your mistake. It's mine. I knew what you were offering was wrong. I took it anyway. I made the choice. Now I'm making another one. Walk away. Let Rebecca expose you. Let me lose my mother. But don't give her your soul just to save mine. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Diana, I know how this looks, but your mother doesn't have to be collateral damage. I'm genuinely willing to donate. The kidney is compatible. The surgery can happen today. Your mother lives. All Nathan has to do is give my family back what he stole. Diana turned her fury on Marcus. Or what you lost when you chose drugs over responsibility. Don't pretend this is noble. You're trading a kidney for a fortune and calling it justice? Maybe it's both, Marcus said quietly. Maybe people can do the right thing for complicated reasons. Isn't that what you and Nathan have been doing all week? The words hit like a slap. Diana felt the hypocrisy of her own position crash down around her. She'd been willing to accept an illegal kidney purchased with dirty money when it served her needs. Now she was judging Marcus for offering a legal donation with strings attached. Nathan, Rebecca said, her voice carrying false sympathy. You have 5 minutes to decide. Sign the papers and save Diana's mother, or refuse and watch everything crumble. The surgical team is standing by. All you have to do is choose. Nathan stared at the contract in his hands. Diana watched him struggle, watched calculation war with emotion, war with something deeper that she couldn't name. She wanted to tell him again to refuse, to let her mother die rather than surrender to blackmail. But the words stuck in her throat because she knew what she'd already proven she'd do to save her mother's life. If I sign this, Nathan said slowly, Marcus donates the kidney through legal channels. No black market organs. No federal crimes, correct, Rebecca said. And you destroy all footage of our conversations? All evidence of illegal offers. Diana walks away clean. Also correct. And you never contact either of us again after this. Rebecca's smile was triumphant. Agreed. Sign the papers, Nathan. Give me this one thing, and everyone gets what they need. Your father's legacy gets protected through Marcus. Diana's mother lives. You keep your freedom. It's actually quite generous when you think about it. Nathan looked at Diana. His expression asked a question she didn't know how to answer. Was this redemption or damnation? Sacrifice or surrender? Could something be both noble and wrong at the same time? Do it, Diana whispered. The words tasted like betrayal, but she said them anyway. Sign the papers. Save my mother. I'll find a way to live with what it costs. Nathan's hand moved to the contract. He pulled out a pen, and for a long moment, just held it poised over the signature line. Diana could see the war happening behind his eyes. Every value he'd ever claimed to hold battling against the reality of what love demanded. Then his hand moved away from the signature line. He set down the pen. He said simply. The room went silent. What did you say? Rebecca's voice turned sharp. I said no. Nathan handed the contract back to her. You win, Rebecca. You get to destroy me. But I won't teach Diana that blackmail works. I won't show her that people with power can always force others to surrender by threatening what they love. And I won't dishonor my father's memory by giving his company to someone who wants it for revenge instead of vision. Diana's knees buckled. Nathan caught her arm, held her upright as the world collapsed around them. You're refusing? Rebecca stood up from the bed, her face flushing with anger. You'd rather go to prison than give me what I'm owed? I'd rather go to prison than teach Diana that her mother's life is a commodity to be traded for business interests. Nathan's voice was steady now, certain. I was willing to break the law to save her mother. I'm willing to pay the price for that now. But I won't let you turn her mother into a bargaining chip. Marcus stepped forward, his expression conflicted. Man, think about what you're doing. Diana's mother has hours, maybe a day. You can save her. Just sign the papers. Nathan repeated. Because if I sign, I'm telling Diana that she owes me everything. That saving her mother makes her forever in my debt. That I can hold her gratitude over her like a weapon for the rest of her life. I won't do that to her. Diana felt tears streaming down her face. You're letting my mother die because you don't want me to feel indebted to you? I'm letting your mother die because the alternative is worse. Nathan turned to face her fully, his hands coming up to frame her face. Diana, if I save her by surrendering to blackmail, you'll never know if I did it because I cared about you or because I was protecting myself. You'll spend the rest of your life questioning my motives, wondering if you're just another business transaction. I can't do that to you. So instead you do nothing and she dies. Diana's voice broke on the words. No. Instead, I do something that matters. Nathan pulled out his phone, scrolled to a number, and pressed call. FBI field office? My name is Nathan Cross. I want to report an attempted illegal organ purchase. Yes, I'll hold. Rebecca's face went white. What are you doing? Confessing. Exposing myself before you can do it? Taking away your leverage? Nathan's eyes never left Diana's face. If I'm already turning myself in, your evidence is worthless. You can't blackmail someone who's already surrendering. You're insane, Rebecca hissed. Maybe, but I'm also free. Nathan spoke into the phone, his voice clear and steady. Yes, I'm still here. I attempted to purchase a kidney through a legal means for a transplant recipient at Seattle Memorial Hospital. I'm prepared to provide full documentation of my attempted crime. I'm currently at the hospital. Room 437. I'll wait for you to arrive. He ended the call and looked at Marcus. You're going to donate that kidney anyway, not because Nathan Cross bought your family's compliance, but because you're genuinely a good person who wants to save a life. Prove me wrong about you, Marcus. Prove that you're better than I am. Marcus stared at him, mouth open, clearly not prepared for this turn of events. I don't understand what you're trying to do. I'm removing myself from the equation. Rebecca can't use me as leverage anymore. Diana can't be implicated in my crimes because I'm confessing before she does anything illegal. And you get to make a choice about who you want to be. Not Nathan Cross's corrupted brother, but Marcus Cross, who saved a life because it was the right thing to do. Diana couldn't breathe. couldn't process what was happening. Nathan had just destroyed himself, thrown away his freedom, his company, everything he'd spent the past week trying to protect. Why? She whispered. Nathan's thumb brushed away her tears. Because loving you means setting you free, not binding you with guilt or debt or gratitude. If your mother lives because Marcus chooses to be generous, that's grace. If she dies, that's tragedy. But either way, you don't owe me anything. You get to walk away clean and build the life you deserve. You can't do this, Rebecca said, her voice rising toward panic. If you confess, the FBI investigates everything. They'll find Marcus's involvement, my planning, the whole scheme. Then I suggest you convince Marcus to donate that kidney before they arrive, Nathan said calmly. You'll have maybe 20 minutes. Spend them being the better people you claim to be. Or spend them watching your revenge destroy everyone, including yourselves. He turned back to Diana, his hands still framing her face, his expression gentle despite everything crumbling around them. I'm sorry I couldn't save her without compromising you. I'm sorry I put you in this position, but I'm not sorry I met you. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, even if knowing you costs me everything. Diana grabbed his wrists, holding him to her. Nathan, they're going to arrest you. You're going to prison. I know. This is insane. This is the worst plan I've ever heard.
Probably.
But it's the only one that lets you sleep at night. Nathan smiled, sad and beautiful and completely sincere. Be brilliant, Diana. Build the life you were meant to have. And don't waste time feeling guilty about me. I made my choices. I get to live with them. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Security probably, or FBI already responding to Nathan's call. The consequences arriving faster than any of them expected. Marcus grabbed Rebecca's arm. We need to decide now. Do I donate or not? Rebecca looked between Nathan and Marcus, calculation evident in her expression. Then something shifted. Some recognition that her revenge had spiraled beyond her control into territory where everyone lost. Donate the kidney, she said quietly. Save the woman's life. Get the FBI involved in proving we didn't break any laws. Let Nathan's confession stand alone. Marcus nodded once, turned, and ran toward the surgical preparation area. Diana looked up at Nathan. This man who'd mocked her a week ago and was now sacrificing everything to free her from debt and guilt. I don't know if I can forgive you for this, good Nathan said softly. Don't forgive me. Hate me if you need to. Just live, Diana. That's all I'm asking. The door burst open. 2 men in FBI jackets entered, hands on their weapons, eyes scanning the room for threats. Nathan released Diana and raised his hands. I'm Nathan Cross, I called. I'm here to confess to attempted illegal organ purchase. They put him in handcuffs. Diana watched, frozen, as they read him his rights, as they led him toward the door. As everything she'd built in the past week shattered like glass. At the doorway, Nathan looked back at her one last time. Promise me something. What? When your mother wakes up, tell her the kidney came from a generous donor. Don't tell her about any of this. Let her believe in good people, doing good things. She deserves that much. Then he was gone. Taken away by federal agents while Diana stood in the wreckage of a week that had transformed her entire world. Rebecca sank back onto the hospital bed, looking suddenly much older. I didn't think he'd do it. I thought he'd sign. I thought he valued his company more than anything. He did, Diana said quietly, until he met someone who reminded him what values actually mean. A doctor appeared in the doorway, surgical mask hanging around his neck. Miss Torres, your mother is in surgery. The donor came through. She's going to be fine. Diana nodded numbly, unable to speak around the storm of emotions threatening to tear her apart. Relief and fury and grief and something that might have been love, all tangled. Together into an impossible knot. Her mother would live. Nathan would go to prison, and Diana would have to find a way to carry both truths for the rest of her life. She walked to the surgical waiting area and sat down to wait for miracles and disasters. Both arriving in the same moment, both changing everything in ways she couldn't yet understand. 6 months later, Diana stood in front of the Washington State Bar Association. Her credentials finally processed, her PhD recognized, her license to practice law in America held in her trembling hands. The waiting room of Sterling Cleaning Services seemed like a lifetime ago. Though she could still smell ammonia when she closed her eyes at night, her mother sat in the front row. Healthy and strong, her new kidney functioning perfectly. She didn't know about Nathan's confession, or the FBI investigation, or the impossible choice that had saved her life. She believed, as Nathan had asked, in generous donors and good fortune. Diana let her keep that belief. The truth was more complicated. After Nathan's arrest, the FBI investigation had unraveled quickly. They'd found no evidence of completed illegal transactions, only Nathan's attempted solicitation. Rebecca and Marcus had donated the kidney through entirely legal channels. Their motivations muddy, but their actions clean. Nathan had taken the fall alone, pleading guilty to attempted organ trafficking with a sentence of 18 months in federal prison. Crosstech Industries had weathered the scandal. The board, perhaps moved by Nathan's sacrifice, or perhaps just pragmatic about bad publicity, had installed Marcus as interim CEO. He'd proven surprisingly competent, his years of addiction having taught him humility that Nathan had lacked. Under Marcus's leadership, the company had quietly shifted focus to healthcare reform advocacy. Pushing for changes to organ donation laws and immigrant credential recognition, it was Nathan's vision, Diana knew. Executed from prison through letters and phone calls that Marcus honored, because guilt was a powerful motivator. Diana had testified at Nathan's sentencing hearing, stood in front of a judge and told the truth about everything: the mocking offer, the German document, the desperate choices, the impossible love that had grown between two broken people trying to save each other. The judge had been unmoved. But Nathan's lawyer had argued that his voluntary confession deserved consideration. 18 months instead of 5 years, a small mercy that felt massive. Diana visited him every week, drove 3 hours to the federal facility, and sat across a metal table while they talked about everything except regret. Nathan looked different in prison orange, smaller somehow, but his eyes held a peace she'd never seen in his expensive suits. He was reading philosophy, teaching financial literacy classes to other inmates, using his time to become someone worthy of the sacrifice he'd made. "I'm proud of you," he'd said last week, when she'd told him about finally passing the bar exam. "You're going to change things, Diana. You're going to fix the systems that broke both of us. We'll fix them together," she'd corrected. "You have 6 months left. Then you're free." "Am I, though?" Nathan had smiled, sad but genuine. "Will I ever be free of what I did to you? Of forcing you into impossible choices because I was too arrogant to see who you were?" Diana had reached across the table, ignoring the guard's warning about contact, and taken his hand. "You set me free. That night in the hospital, you chose my freedom over your company. Over your entire life. That's not something I'll ever forget." Now, standing in the Bar Association office with her license in hand, Diana thought about freedom and debt and love and sacrifice, about how none of it was simple, how morality existed in shades of gray that defied easy categorization. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Heard you passed the bar. Dad would have been proud." "Nathan definitely is. When you're ready, Crosstech has a position waiting. Senior Legal Counsel for Immigration and Healthcare Reform. 6-figure salary. Full authority. Think about it." Diana stared at the message. 6 months ago, she would have jumped at the offer, seen it as justice, as claiming what she'd always deserved. But now, it felt like something else. Like accepting the fruits of Nathan's sacrifice without earning them herself. She texted back, "Thank you. But I'm starting my own practice. Immigration law. Healthcare advocacy. Pro bono for people like me, people the system failed. Maybe Crosstech can be a client instead of an employer." Marcus's response came quickly. "Even better. Send me your information. We'll be your first client. Nathan says to tell you he knew you'd choose the hard way. Says that's why he loves you." Diana's breath caught. Nathan had never said those words directly, even though they'd hung in the air between them for months. Seeing them in text, secondhand through his brother, made them real in a way that terrified and thrilled her. Her mother appeared at her elbow, beaming with pride. "Mia, you did it. My daughter." The lawyer. "I knew those years of education would mean something." "It meant everything, Mama," Diana said, hugging her close. "Every choice we made brought us here, even the hard ones." Diana thought of Nathan in prison, of Rebecca's cold revenge, of Marcus's redemption kidney, of all the impossible moral calculations that had saved her mother's life, especially the hard ones. They walked out of the Bar Association building into Seattle sunshine. Diana's phone rang. "Federal Correctional Facility." She answered immediately. "Diana." Nathan's voice, familiar even through bad prison phones. "They told me you passed. Congratulations." "Thank you. For everything. For believing I could do this even when I was cleaning your office floors." "Oh, I should have believed in you from the first moment I saw you," Nathan said quietly. "Before I knew about your PhD or your expertise. Just because you existed and deserved respect. I'm sorry it took humiliation to teach me that." Diana leaned against the building wall, letting her mother drift away to give her privacy. "Nathan, Marcus told me what you said. About loving me." Silence stretched across the phone line. Then Nathan's voice came back, raw with vulnerability. "I shouldn't have said that. You don't owe me anything. Especially not love. I put you in an impossible situation." "You set me free from an impossible situation," Diana corrected. "And I've spent 6 months trying to figure out if what I feel for you is gratitude or guilt or something real. I think I finally know. What is it?" "All three. And that's okay. Love doesn't have to be pure to be real. It doesn't have to be simple to matter." Diana took a breath, steadying herself. "I love you, Nathan Krause. Not because you saved my mother, but because you destroyed yourself to free me from debt. Because you learned to see people as human instead of background. Because you're in prison teaching financial literacy instead of blaming the world for your consequences." Nathan's breath caught audibly. "Diana, I'm in prison. I have 6 months left on my sentence, but I'll be a convicted felon forever. I can't give you the life you deserve. I don't want the life I deserve. I want the life I choose. And I'm choosing to wait 6 months. Then we're going to build something together. Not a company, not an empire, but something that matters. We're going to fix broken systems. We're going to help people like me who fell through the cracks. And we're going to do it as partners. As equals. As two people who found each other in the worst possible way and decided to become better because of it. You're sure?" Nathan's voice was barely a whisper. "You're sure you can forgive what I did? How I treated you that first night?" "No," Diana said honestly. "I'm not sure I can forgive you, but I'm sure I can love you anyway." Forgiveness isn't a requirement for love. Sometimes love is choosing to move forward despite the wounds, not pretending they never existed. Nathan laughed, the sound breaking on something that might have been tears. "God, I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're getting me anyway. In 6 months, I'll be waiting at the prison gate with a car and a list of everything we're going to change about this broken world. I can't wait. Neither can I." Diana smiled through her own tears. "But we're good at waiting now, aren't we? Good at making impossible choices and living with consequences. We've had plenty of practice." "Diana," Nathan said, his voice turning serious, "when I get out, I need you to know something. I'm not the same man who mocked you in that office. Prison strips away a lot of illusions. I've spent 6 months thinking about privilege and arrogance and all the ways I hurt people without even noticing. I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the sacrifice you made by choosing me." "I'm not the same woman either," Diana replied. "I'm not someone who accepts crumbs anymore. I'm not someone who makes herself small to survive. You helped me remember who I was always meant to be. So we're even. Partners. Partners. In business, in life, in making the world slightly less terrible for people who deserve better." "I love you," Nathan said, the word simple and devastating. "I'll love you when I get out of prison. I'll love you while we're building our practice. I'll love you through every impossible choice we face from here on out." "You changed my life, Diana Torres." "You changed mine too," Diana whispered. "Now, Let's change everyone else's. They talked until the guard warned Nathan his time was up, making plans and dreaming futures and promising each other that 6 months would pass quickly. When the line went dead, Diana stood in the Seattle sunshine, feeling the weight of her bar license in her hand and the lightness of possibility in her chest. Her mother returned, concern in her eyes. "Everything okay, Mia?" "Everything's complicated," Diana said. "But yes, everything's okay. This man, Nathan, the one you visit every week, you love him?" Diana considered lying, then decided they were past that. "Yes, Mama, I love him. He's the reason you're alive." Her mother's expression shifted through confusion to understanding to something softer. "Then I'm grateful to him, and to you for being strong enough to save us both." They walked to Diana's car together. Two women who'd survived possible circumstances through grace and sacrifice and choices that defied easy moral categories. Diana drove her mother home, helped her with dinner, and listened to stories about the dialysis center friends who'd celebrated when they heard about the successful transplant. That night, Diana sat at her new desk in her tiny apartment and drafted the paperwork for Torres. Immigration and healthcare law. She designed a logo featuring two hands reaching toward each other across a divide. She wrote mission statements about dignity and access and fixing systems that broke people for the crime of needing help, and she marked 6 months on her calendar with a simple note: freedom. The months passed in a blur of casework and visiting hours and late-night phone calls with Nathan discussing legal strategies. Diana took on clients who couldn't pay, immigrants with credentials that America refused to recognize, families navigating healthcare bureaucracies that seemed designed to deny rather than help. She won some cases and lost others, but every victory felt like redemption for the years she'd spent invisible. Crosstech became her biggest client, funding her pro bono work while Marcus implemented Nathan's vision for corporate responsibility. Rebecca disappeared from public life, her revenge satisfied or perhaps just exhausted by its own futility. The story of Nathan Cross's imprisonment became business school case studies about ethics and sacrifice, though Diana doubted any classroom discussion could capture the real complexity of what they'd lived through. Finally, on a cold November morning, 6 months after her bar admission, Diana drove to the federal facility for the last time. She wore her best suit, charcoal gray like the one Nathan had worn the night they met, and carried documents for the immigration law practice they would build together. The prison gates opened at 8 a.m. Nathan walked through them looking thinner, older, marked by time, but somehow more solid than he'd been before. His eyes found hers immediately, and the smile that broke across his face was worth every impossible choice they'd made. Diana ran to him, crossing the distance between then and now, between privilege and struggle, between who they'd been and who they'd become. He caught her in his arms, lifting her off the ground, and for the first time since that night on the rooftop, she let herself believe that people could change, that love could survive impossible circumstances, that breaking bad rules sometimes created better people. "Ready to fix the world?" Nathan asked against her hair. "With you?" "Always." They drove away from the prison together, leaving behind the wreckage of Nathan's old life and Diana's invisible years. The road ahead was uncertain, marked by a convicted felon trying to practice law and an immigrant woman fighting systems designed to exclude her. But they were together, partners in every sense, bound not by debt or guilt, but by the shared understanding that surviving impossible choices made people either bitter or better. And they'd chosen better. Diana's phone buzzed with their first official case. An immigrant engineer with a PhD in chemical engineering working as a dishwasher, because America wouldn't recognize his credentials. The irony was not lost on either of them. "This one's personal," Nathan said, reading over her shoulder. "They all are," Diana replied. "That's the point." They pulled up to Diana's office, a small storefront with Torres immigration and healthcare law painted on the window. Nathan stared at it, his expression complex. "You didn't put my name on the door? You're a convicted felon. Your name would scare away clients." Diana squeezed his hand. "But every case we win, every life we change, that's your name too, where it matters." In the work, not on the sign. Nathan turned to look at her, and Diana saw tears in his eyes. I spent my whole life trying to put my name on things. Buildings, companies, awards. None of it mattered. This matters. Then let's get to work. They walked into the office together. Two broken people who'd found each other in the worst possible way and built something beautiful from the wreckage. The immigrant engineer was already waiting, his daughter beside him. Hope and skepticism warring in their expressions. Diana shook their hands, introduced Nathan as her partner, and began asking questions. Nathan took notes, asked follow-up questions, treated them with the dignity he'd once denied Diana, and slowly, carefully, they began building the case that would restore a man's credentials and with them, his dignity. It wasn't redemption. Redemption was too simple a word for what they were doing. It was transformation, ongoing and imperfect. Choosing every day to be better than they'd been the day before. That night, as they locked up the office and walked to Diana's car, Nathan stopped her with a hand on her arm. Diana, there's something I need to say. Something I should have said that first night before everything got complicated. Diana turned to face him in the streetlight, seeing the man he'd become overlaid with the ghost of the man he'd been. What is it? Nathan took both her hands in his. I'm sorry. For mocking you. For treating you like you were invisible. For offering you money as a joke. For all the ways my privilege blinded me to your humanity. I'm sorry it took losing everything to see what was right in front of me. And I'm grateful every single day that you gave me the chance to become someone worthy of knowing you. Diana felt tears spill down her cheeks. I'm sorry too. For judging you without understanding that people can change. For almost walking away when you needed someone to believe in you. For making this harder than it had to be because I was too hurt to see past your mistakes. We were both doing the best we could with impossible circumstances, Nathan said softly. Yeah, we were. Diana stood on her toes and kissed him, gentle and tentative. Their first kiss tasting of apologies and promises, and the bittersweet knowledge that love built on tragedy was still love, still worth fighting for, still capable of changing the world one case at a time when they pulled apart. Nathan was smiling through tears. So what now? Diana thought about her mother recovering at home, about the stack of case files waiting on her desk, about the systems they would challenge and the lives they would change and the impossible choices still to come. She thought about cleaning floors at midnight, and German documents and rooftop, confessions and prison visits that had become the foundation of something. Neither of them could have predicted. Now, we live, she said simply. We work. We love. We make impossible choices and live with the consequences. We become the people we were always meant to be, one difficult day at a time. Together. Together, partners, always. They drove through Seattle streets, toward Diana's apartment, toward their future, toward all the complicated, beautiful, messy, real moments that awaited two people, who'd learned that sometimes the only way forward was through darkness, and sometimes the people who hurt you most were the same ones who saved you. And sometimes love was less about forgiveness than about choosing to build. Something new from the ruins of who you used to be. Diana's mother was waiting when they arrived. Dinner prepared. A celebration for Nathan's release and their partnership and the life they were building from impossible choices. As they sat around the table together, eating and laughing and planning futures that 6 months ago had seemed impossible, Diana caught Nathan's eye across the table. He smiled at her, and she smiled back. And in that moment, Diana understood that this was what survived when everything else burned away. Connection. Partnership. The choice to see each other's humanity even when it was easier to look away. They had been broken. They had been cruel and desperate and forced into darkness by systems designed to crush people who didn't fit prescribed molds. But they had also been resilient. They had chosen, against all logic and morality and common sense, to love each other through the wreckage. And maybe that was enough. Maybe choosing love despite the complications, despite the scars, despite the impossible mathematics of guilt and debt and gratitude, maybe that was how broken people became whole. The evening stretched into night, Stories shared, dreams whispered, promises made not in the heat of crisis, but in the quiet certainty of people who'd survived the worst and chosen to build something better. When Diana finally walked Nathan to the door, both of them exhausted and happy, and still slightly disbelieving that they'd made it here. He paused on the threshold. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for waiting, for believing I could change, for loving me when I didn't deserve it." "You don't have to thank me for loving you," Diana replied. "Love isn't a transaction. It's a choice, and I choose you, Nathan Cross. Every day. Even the hard ones. Especially the hard ones. Especially those." Nathan kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. "I'll see you tomorrow. Same time? Same time? We have an engineer to save. We have a system to change. One case at a time? One case at a time," Nathan agreed. He left, and Diana closed the door, leaning against it and breathing in the enormity of what they'd survived. Her mother appeared in the hallway, a knowing smile on her face. "He's a good man, Mia. Different than I expected, but good." "He wasn't always," Diana said honestly, "but he is now. We both are. That's enough. More than enough. That's everything." Diana hugged her mother, feeling the steady beat of her heart, the warmth of her body. The living proof that impossible choices sometimes save the people you loved most. They stood together in the small apartment that 6 months ago had felt like a prison and now felt like possibility. Two women who'd survived, and a man who'd sacrificed everything for redemption, building futures from fragments of broken pasts. And in the morning, Diana would wake up and go to work. She would fight immigration courts and healthcare bureaucracies. She would win some battles and lose others. She would build a practice that mattered, with a partner who understood what it cost to change. Alongside clients who deserved more than they'd been given, it wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever was. But she'd learned in the hardest possible way that surviving impossible circumstances taught you to face the next impossible moment with courage earned through pain. She'd learned that love, built in darkness, could withstand any light. She'd learned that becoming the person you were meant to be sometimes required breaking the person you'd been. And she'd learned, most importantly, that two broken people choosing each other despite everything was its own kind of miracle. Small and imperfect and absolutely worth fighting for. Diana turned off the lights and went to sleep, dreaming of German documents and rooftop confessions and prison gates opening onto possibility, dreaming of a future built one impossible choice at a time, one case at a time, one act of love at a time, dreaming of redemption that looked less like forgiveness and more like two people standing together in the wreckage, saying, "We survived this. What should we build next?" And in the morning, they would answer that question together. The end.